Hey guys, what's up? It's Emily. This is the October reading wrap-up video. I don't understand how time works anymore. I truly don't. I don't know how it's November already, but here we are. October is over, and I read 11 books. This month was really fun because I feel like it's the first month that I feel like I really committed to the season and the time of year. I don't typically do that, and I'm really happy I did, and I want to do this more in the future. I feel like I had a really nice variety of spooky books and also like snug kind of fall romance books as well. I was really happy with my selection. Let's just get started on this. So the first book I read this month was Discovery of Witches. This is a trilogy. There are 3 books. Yes, Emily, that's what a trilogy means. This is also a show. I think it's on Netflix. It's on some streaming service. And a lot of people really love the show. I think I want to read the other books before watching the show. This is the first book of the trilogy. It's basically about this young witch. This witch called Diana Bishop. I think she's like in her early 30s. Her parents are dead, and she is not keen on being a witch. Like, she kind of just likes to pretend that she doesn't have powers. She is like a researcher, I think, if I remember correctly. She works at Oxford. One day she's like in the library and this book kind of like jumps out at her, and it's like a magical book and she doesn't know why. Then she realizes that like all of these vampires and demons and other witches are like freaking out that this book has been like activated or whatever. She meets this vampire named Matthew who's like trying to help her like figure it out. It's a very rich world. Like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of characters. There's witches, demons, and vampires in this book. The humans don't know they exist, but there's like a lot of them around all the time. I gave it 4 stars. It definitely was like dense at some points, a little longer. Sometimes the pacing was a little slow for me. There's a lot of history involved, some science involved, etc. It just, I think in some ways like slowed down the pacing for me to like explain certain things, rather than like, I really like it when specifically fantasy authors can incorporate world building just a little bit more like seamlessly into the plot rather than having to explain it so much. So that's kind of the only reason why it was a little lacking for me in that department, but I really did enjoy the book, and I do want to read the other 2 books in the series. I'm just not exactly sure when I'm going to get to that, but I would recommend this for sure. And I think you could still read this in November. November should also be spooky season. Next, I talked about this in my fall reading vlog. I read Wicked, the book that was written in 1995 that the musical is based off of, and therefore the movie coming out is based off of. I've been wanting to read this before the movie came out. It's by Gregory Maguire, and he writes a lot of like villain origin story books. I read his book Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. He also has one called Mirror Mirror, which I'm assuming is about the evil queen. He has like a lot of books in this series specifically. I think the next one is called Son of a Witch. I don't plan on reading any of them. I gave this book 3 stars. I considered giving it 4 just because as I said in my reading vlog, he did give us these characters as we know them in Wicked. So like Elphaba, Galinda, Fiyero, Dr. Dilliman, Madame Morrible, Bach, Chistery, all of these characters. But I think there's a lot of relationship dynamics and relationship to the Wizard of Oz that for me was, oh, and Nessa Rose, obviously, you can't forget Nessa. For me, there was a lot of dynamics between characters, relationship to the original Wizard of Oz that was really lacking in this book that is present in the musical, like the book to the musical. And I just think that the book to the musical is so much more focused and like has a clear point of view, and this kind of feels like a really, really early draft of that, which I guess in a way it kind of is. I don't regret reading it, and I think if you're a fan of Oz in any way, shape, or form, if you love the musical, if you're really into that world, I would still recommend reading it. Sorry, I had to get up to get some water. My throat is like not doing well. Read this if you love Oz. Next, I read a lot on my Kindle this month too, which is something I've really been meaning to start doing more for a variety of reasons. I made a video about it this month, and so I'm really happy that I started getting into that. I also read more like outside, which was nice. I digress. The next book I read on my Kindle was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which is like a huge book this fall. This was like one of those books that is like a TikTok sensation. I didn't particularly find it like the most impressive thing I've ever read, but I feel like it understood what it was. When I say like I flew by this book, I literally could have read it maybe in like an hour and a half. Like it was less than 300 pages. Like it was so quick. It's about this young woman, Jeannie, who starts running her aunt's cafe, Pumpkin Spice Cafe, in this small town. She's lived all of her 20s, I believe, like doing executive assistant work, and is realizing like she just spent so much of her time like focusing on somebody else's sort of vision and company, whatever, and she kind of doesn't know who she is and like what's happening. So she lives above the cafe. It kind of opens where she thinks there's a serial killer outside. She's there alone. She lives alone. And it ends up being this like farmer guy who is just delivering some supplies to the cafe for their smoothies. And it's very like small town. I think it's New England, I want to say, vibes. And it's just like this very small town where everybody knows each other. It feels like everybody owns a little shop. And this grumpy guy, Logan, who is kind of, I guess, loosely inspired off of Luke from the Gilmore Girls. It's written by Lori Gilmore, which I learned is a, not stage name, what's it called? Pseudonym? It's not her real name. It really is inspired by Stars Hollow and like that world and everything. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I'm happy I read it. It was very snug and it was a really nice like palette cleanser. It was great. The next book I read, I've had this for so long, like since I started getting back into reading as an adult, like over 2 years ago. I finally read Trick Mirror by Gio Tolentino. I gave it 4 stars. I mean, this is just a collection of essays, pretty much like feminist essays, goes into the internet a bit. It's just like nothing that I don't already know as a woman that has read a lot of feminist literature. So for me personally, like I don't really think I needed to read this. I talk about this in my vlog too. It's really important for everyone to read all kinds of like sociology based books about gender, class, race, how those all play a part in structures and patterns that develop in society, etc. The contents of this specific book, like I've just read so many books that discuss this kind of thing, and so for me, like I really did not need to read it. It was also really, like, I would check the content warnings on it. It was kind of a lot of, like, triggering images and discussions as well. It's definitely marketed towards women, and I mean, I think it's important for women to read it too, but I also think it's important for people who are not women to read it. I give it 4 stars, and this was also written in like 2019. I think it was released, or 2018, so the feeling of it being a little, it's not dated, it's just like, we all know this at this point. She was writing it, I think, during the Me Too movement, which these types of discussions and things were all sadly kind of like relatively new. So if you want to read more feminist literature and like essays and stuff, definitely give this a read. It's pretty dense, like it's pretty dense essays with a lot of facts and data and information. So yeah, that's all. Next, I read Assistant to the Villain, which is about this young woman who, she lives in this town where this like villain exists. They literally call him the villain, and she starts working as his assistant. This won a Goodreads Choice Award, so like maybe I'm way off base, but I didn't like it. I listened to it. I gave it 2 stars. I was not invested. I found it very meandering. I didn't care about the characters at all. And I'm really sorry. Like, it's maybe if you're looking for like a palate cleansing like romantasy, this might work for you, but for me, I really could not get into the characters at all. Also to note, I did listen to this, and anytime I've listened to a fantasy or like romantasy or like more like YA fantasy based vibe, I have not liked it. So that also could have something to do with it. Maybe if I read it with my own eyes, I would have been like a 3.5, who knows. But my experience listening to it, I gave it 2 stars. I'm very sorry. Not saying don't try it. Please do try it and like see for yourself if you like it. I know a lot of people do love this book and have read it. I believe it's a trilogy. I will not be continuing. Next, I read The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, which is the next book in what's the actual series called here? It's called the Dream Harbor series. So the Pumpkin Spice Cafe was the first book, and then the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore is the second book. So this is about this manager of this bookstore called the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore in Dream Harbor, which is this kind of like Stars Hollow like town from the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. And it's about this girl Hazel who is going to be 30, and she's like realized that she has not had a lot of adventures, like she hasn't taken a lot of risks, and like she wants to have like an unforgettable summer. It is like a summer book, which is interesting, but it doesn't feel like a summer book. It feels like a fall book because it's in this like small little town. And then there's Noah, this guy who is 25. He's a little younger than her. They've been kind of like crushing on each other for a long time, and she notices there's like secret messages that are appearing in her books at the bookstore with certain things being highlighted and stuff. It's like clues, and so they decide to like go on this adventure together. And it's very snug. I do have to say, I gave it 3 stars. I really preferred Pumpkin Spice Cafe, not even because of the characters or whatever. This one just was like 100 pages longer, and what I liked about the Pumpkin Spice Cafe is that, again, like it knew what it was. I felt like this could have been a lot shorter and just like gotten to the point a little quicker. But I still gave it 3 stars. It was fun and it was cute, and it was like a very snug fall read for sure. Oh my god, next, Keeping 13, like, oh my god. It is just the most beautiful character study. I love every single character so much. I remember like being on the subway listening to this, crying. It's just so beautiful, and it deals with a lot of really important issues too. It is a romance, like it is about these 2 people that fall in love, but it's so much more than that too. And like I really only personally connect on a 5-star level to romances when they are about something greater and deeper, and this definitely is. I think it's such an important book to read. It made me think a lot about things, but I don't want to say what they are because I don't want to give it away, and it is a sequel, so I don't want to say too much what it's about. Yeah, if you have not read the series, I definitely recommend it. And I think listening to it, I really enjoyed, specifically because the characters are Irish. And I think anytime, like I felt the same way with Magnolia Parks. Like I listened to a lot of that. I read some of it, but I also listened to it. And I really preferred listening to that as well as Boys of Tommen, because there's something about it being read in the native accent of the characters that gives it a certain emotional specificity that I think the author intended, that like I just wouldn't be able to do with my American accent, if that makes sense. This was amazing. I cannot say enough good things about it. I opened this on Goodreads and it's like romance, sports romance. When I think of this book, the last thing I think about is sports. So if that's something that turns you off, like don't let that turn you off for this book. Definitely recommend it for like mature readers, I would say. Not even because of spice, but just definitely deals with some heavy stuff. Next, I read Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I read Conversations with Friends by her, and it just did not do it for me. Intermezzo also did not really do it for me personally. Like, I'm so happy for her success, and I'm so happy that people read her books and like connect to them so much and love them so much. She does not do it for me. I find her writing really meandering. She's like a huge character study person, and I'm also a huge character study person. Like, I typically really like character studies, but the way she writes them, there's like a disconnect for me. I don't really know how to explain it. There were parts of this book that I enjoyed. I think I finally connected to a character towards the end, but to me that's like not enough to justify rating it higher. It's about these 2 brothers. One is like 23 and one is in his 30s, like maybe 32, and they just lost their father. The older one has these 2 girlfriends essentially, and the younger one is like this kind of more like awkward chess player. The characters feel original. It's just the writing style, the way it was written, just, I don't know, it did not click. It didn't do it for me. I'm very sorry. I mean, 3 stars is not a bad rating. I think I'm good. I don't think I need to read any more Sally Rooney. The next book I read was The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. This is just one of those books, super fast-paced, murder mystery thriller. I read it in like 4 hours. I gave it 4 stars. I thought I knew what the twist was, and I like kind of got part of it. I did not get the full twist. To me, that is very exciting when that happens, because I typically predict twists pretty early on. I'm just good at that. But it's exciting when an author kind of takes me on a journey that like I don't know what's going on. The way this book is written with the alternate points of view, alternate timeline, I really enjoy that for thrillers. It kind of creates a situation where like you assume something, but because it's like alternating time periods, you like discover things that maybe you thought but aren't actually the thing. You know what I mean? I don't want to give anything away, but I always love that for thrillers. Definitely recommend that one. The next book I read is The Phantom Forest by Liz Caron. I've read her 2 other books that she released after this duology called Night's Edge. I gave it 4 stars. It's a really unique idea, I think, but also is like inspired by definitely some other works, like maybe Dante's Inferno, or, you know. It's about this young woman, Leda, who, it's this like post-apocalyptic world where they like discovered the truth of the underworld and like what happens in the afterlife, basically. And so they like offer a sacrifice to this monster. I don't know if it's every year, but it's like this like human sacrifice ritual. And she basically gets sacrificed and she gets sent to the underworld and has to like team up with this devil to protect her brother beyond the grave. It's pretty heavy world building, I would say. I would not recommend this to first-time fantasy readers. I would recommend her other duology for like if you haven't read a lot of fantasy. But yeah, this is definitely a really interesting read, and it was pretty quick. Like it's 336 pages, so it's not like a super long read. And then last I read Phantasma. For like the first 300 pages, it was giving Caraval, which I really did not enjoy. It's basically about this like necromancer, this young necromancer. Her mom just died and she like got her mom's powers, and then she has a younger sister who basically she believes has gone to Phantasma, which is this like deadly competition. She basically goes in to try to find her sister, and I think there's like 7 challenges because there's 7 circles of hell and there's like devils and stuff, and they're trying to make deals with people and trick them, and there's like haunts and stuff. It's a very like Halloween centric book. I found every trial kind of boring. Like I was just ready to like get through like all of the trials and like kind of get to the point. Like, a really big part of the book are these trials. You know that the main character isn't gonna die, so it's kind of like let's just get to the point. It got really interesting at the end, and I did end up giving it 4 stars. Even though, did I give it 4 stars? No, I gave it 3.5. I gave it 3.5 stars. There was also some stuff at the end where I was like, what? Like I thought the ending was not 100% what I needed. This book kind of like got me into a slight slump, but definitely by the time I got to page like 450, I was going through, I was really excited, but it's only like 500 pages. So yeah, it just could have been cut, I guess, for me. I really appreciated the exploration of OCD in this book. This main character, she has this like shadow voice in her head, which is basically a representation, I guess kind of a symbol, but also just kind of blatantly like what having OCD feels like in an OCD brain. I really appreciated that because I have struggled with OCD. Any author or writer that is like trying to incorporate what OCD really is into something, I have a big appreciation for. People misuse OCD as a term. I think people don't really understand what it is. I appreciated that and I enjoyed that part of the book. And that's it. Those are the 11 books I read in October. Even though you're probably watching this in November, most likely, as I said, I do think spooky season and like snug, cozy fall season really should continue on through November. Give yourself permission to read some more spooky books and try these out if you haven't. If you've read any of these this month or before, let me know what you thought about it. That's it. That's the video. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good week or weekend or whatever day it is.